Valley of the Sun Audio presents Dick Sutphen's Master of Life Wisdom book, read by Dick Sutphen.
Just 4 words can summarize all of my metaphysical teachings. Cast away your delusions. This is the ultimate wisdom, the ultimate answer. When you fully understand what cast away your delusions means, you have the awareness to eliminate suffering and to attain peace of mind. If you are one of the multitudes who wonder why you were here on the earth, the answer is to cast away your delusions. For nearly 20 years I've been telling people that their earthly purpose is to learn to let go of fear and to express unconditional love. Now, your fear-based emotions are delusions. Prejudice, anger, selfishness, jealousy, hate, repression, envy, greed, possessiveness, guilt, and egotism are all responses to past programming. These undesirable, unnecessary fears keep you earthbound on the wheel of reincarnation. But beneath your fearful programming, you are a being of pure love, a fully enlightened soul. So, the way to liberate yourself is to cast away your delusions so you can more fully realize what you already are. The following concepts, dialogues, and bits of metaphysical philosophy are stepping stones of awareness that can help you to cast away your delusions. Assume for a moment you are walking in a snake-infested area. In the dim light, a length of rope lying on the ground might appear to be a snake. So your mind projects the fear as reality, and your response is to freeze in your tracks. Maybe you gasp and shudder. Your body releases adrenaline. Maybe you run and fall. You could even have a heart attack and die. And all the while, there was never any snake at all. You created and projected it into reality. Now it follows that your familiar world is not the world of reality. It is simply your projection of the world, what the Eastern mystics call Maya, an illusion. Yes, your world of reality exists, but your perception distorts it and creates great misunderstandings. Your conscious beliefs about philosophy, relationships, society, and who you are confuse it further. Often, your mind is wrong. And if your mind is wrong, maybe no mind is right. No mind is a matter of accepting what is and ceasing to compare one thing to another or one person to another. With no mind, there is no division, no prejudice, no judgment, and no blame. No mind is the goal of all who seek to cast away their delusions. When you are upset by unacceptable things, the way to resolve the situation is to simply accept what is unacceptable. Examine your unacceptables until you are clear that they exist as a personal issue only because you give them power. And you give them power by the way you have chosen to view them. Naturally, you don't have to give up the unacceptables in your life, but you will continue to suffer as long as you hold on to them, or as long as you try to push them away. If your unacceptables can be changed, change them into acceptables. But if they can't be changed, to free yourself, simply accept them. You have 2 choices, to accept or not accept what is. Acceptance can end suffering. Non-acceptance ensures the continuation of suffering. Living unconsciously, you go through the motions of life. You go from job to job, you change mates, interests, religions, in the hope that this time something is going to happen. You think, this time it will work. I'll make these changes and life will be great. This time, I'll be happy. But if you live with expectations, your experiences will rarely satisfy your expectations, and you will always be disappointed. So, until you can start living consciously, without expectations, not much is going to change. Rather than changing the people and things in your life, change your consciousness by simply experiencing what you experience without expectations. Look for the joy in each experience, and let the disharmony flow through you without affecting you. You fear misfortune and desire good fortune. But if you examine your experiences, you will find that misfortune often turns out to be good fortune, and good fortune to be misfortune. Instead, learn to meet the changing circumstances of life with an open mind. Don't be elated by success or depressed by failure. Don't praise good and condemn bad, or cherish purity and despise impurity. Long for success and condemn failure. Recognize that judging one thing against another is an expression of duality, and duality arises from delusions. Consider all the words that express duality and eliminate them from your thinking and speech. When you can stop using these terms and avoid the emotions they generate, you begin to recognize what is and understand the truth in all things. Whatever you refuse to face consciously, you must suffer unconsciously. Whatever in your life isn't working is a result of situations you have refused to face consciously. You've repressed your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and refused to act. The way to resolve conflicts is to deal with them as directly, honestly, and efficiently as possible. You must accept responsibility for your condition and act. Just as books and movies establish situations of conflict and then resolve them, you set up problems in your life and then find ways to work them out. The more aware you become, the more you'll flow with the stream of life instead of fighting it. And in time, you will come to understand that you aren't flowing along with the stream at all. You are the stream. It follows that you are not a person trapped with problems. You are the trap. And if you are the trap, you've created your current situation to give yourself the opportunity to resolve it. What you deny to others will be denied to you. You always experience what you deeply believe to be so, and what you feel strongly about creates your reality. So if you resent other people's success, you will be denied success. If you're jealous of someone else's loving relationship, you will be denied an ideal relationship. Now here's another way to look at this. You can't become what you resent. So, if you think wealthy people are snobs, your image of them will work against you. Also, people will always live up to their own self-image. And if to you being wealthy means being a snob, subconsciously you won't allow yourself to attain wealth. All the conditions in your life have evolved from your beliefs. Your disharmonious beliefs are like a cage that restricts your freedom. If you want to break out of the cage, you must first recognize that you aren't free. You can't change what you don't recognize. All right. I'm now going to share some Master of Life magazine articles that relate to casting away your delusions. Now, these features are primarily reconstructed dialogues between seminar participants and myself. In any Sutphen seminar, the participants may ask for the microphone and interact with me if they desire, but they are never forced or asked individually to share. The majority of attendees participate in the regressions and self-exploration sessions and observe without interacting. Now, out of the context of the seminar, trainer dialogues often appear cold and unfeeling. In reality, they are a form of the old Zen teacher-student association. For the trainer has one goal in mind, to create the space for the participant to help himself by finding his own truths. Although my seminars are a mixture of metaphysics and Zen, I like to share that Zen is neither a religion nor a philosophy, but a way of liberation. It's a game of discovering who you are beneath your fear programming. The Zen master often used a stick to hit a student who wasn't getting it. In my seminars, I purposely use attitudes and words as a stick. One participant might react best to shock, another to gentle support, another to past life awareness, etc. The trainer must do this even at the cost of incurring the participant's dislike. As in Zen, the participant is encouraged to leap into the unknown and find the true self within. The true self is found when the false self is renounced. To accomplish the goal, the trainer must jolt participants out of their intellectual ruts, passé notions, views, and convictions that are restricting their lives. The following dialogues are primarily reconstructed from tape recordings of Bushido and Master of Life seminar trainings. The first feature ran in Master of Life magazine, issue number 42, and is titled, Freedom from Yourself. The search for true freedom is what all my communications are ultimately about. Freedom of the self and from the self. Freedom of the self means literal freedom. Freedom from oppressive environments and relationships. The freedom of a satisfying career and the freedom to make life meaningful. Freedom from the self means freedom from domination by addictions or passions, and the freedom to rise above the effects of fear-based emotions that keep you from becoming all you are capable of being. Dialogue number 1. Most of you are seeking enlightenment, and you think that you're going to find it by looking under a white light or through some cosmic foo-foo spiritual discipline. I noticed a few scowls in the audience. Many of the seminar participants began crossing their arms, closing off communication with their body language. I pushed harder. First of all, there is no such thing as enlightenment. You're going to have to settle for self-actualization. "This is ridiculous," said a young man in his mid-20s. He had raised his hand and, without waiting to be acknowledged, stood up and began speaking before the support team member arrived with a microphone. "I've been studying spirituality for 6 years, and I didn't come here to be told that there's no such thing as enlightenment." I walked up the aisle until I was close enough to read his name tag. "Sorry, Phil, but many of the things you believe are simply not true. You've accepted beliefs about people and philosophy and truths that have helped you to survive. But you've been conned, and so has everyone else in this room." "You don't know anything," Phil sputtered. "I know that the level of your success in life will depend upon your ability to let go of fears and mistaken beliefs." "Well, I know absolutely that there are many enlightened souls upon the earth, and obviously you aren't one of them," Phil said. "No, I'm not, but I'd like you to show me one." "Are you speaking of the big names in the spiritual field, the famous Oriental or Middle Eastern gurus, or the best-selling metaphysical authors, or maybe the channelers or the human potential leaders?" "Sure, for starters." "I don't think so, Phil. Many of these people are personal friends of mine who are doing wonderful work, and many are certainly self-actualized, but not enlightened. And at least a dozen other leaders in the New Age human potential field have been involved in major public scandals in the last 3 years. I'm afraid that those who loudly proclaim to be enlightened aren't. Well, maybe we don't define enlightenment the same way, Phil said. Well, wouldn't an enlightened soul be someone who's attained freedom from their addictions and passions? In other words, wouldn't he have risen above the effects of fear-based emotions such as anger and worry and selfishness and jealousy and hate and repression, greed, possessiveness, envy, inhibitions, egotism, malice, resentment, and blame? I responded. Well, there are a lot of people who have attained freedom from the self, Phil said firmly. Really? People who never ever get upset by circumstances or the actions of others? They never judge others in any way? They totally accept what is? They never take anything personally? They never smile when they don't really feel like smiling? They... What do you mean, smile, when they don't feel like smiling? Phil interrupted. Well, if you smile when you don't feel like smiling, you're not being direct and honest in your communications. You're wearing a mask and repressing who you really are. And that's fear. Maybe just a little bitty fear, but it's fear. You fear that others won't like you if you don't smile. Or you'll feel uncomfortable if you don't make them feel more comfortable. Or... Got it, Phil said, sitting down. Dialogue number 2. How is anyone ever going to rise above all the fear-based emotions? Asked Jennifer, a pretty blonde woman in her 30s who wore the latest Melrose Avenue fashions with flair. Well, it certainly won't happen unless you give it importance and set it as a goal, I said. It can only result from the expanded awareness of self-actualized thinking. Change takes time. You have to work on it. But it's such a difficult task. Why even bother? Because your life will work better and better in direct relationship to your ability to rise above the fears. Even a little effort at understanding will result in improvements. I'm sure you'd claim fighting with my husband is based on fear, she said. Sure. You want approval or control, or you wouldn't fight. Both actions are manifestations of the fear of not getting what you want. Oh, I don't understand. You want your husband to approve of your actions or reactions, or you want to control his actions or reactions. He wants the same thing. I want him to stop criticizing me. You want to control his actions. Well, I guess so, if that's what it takes to get him to stop. You make my point, Jennifer, but let's take this just a little further and explore it from a self-actualized viewpoint. Is your husband normally a critical person? Yes, he's always been critical of everything and everybody. Always? Then do you think he's going to change? No, not really. You married him knowing that he was a critical person. Yes, but do you want out of the marriage? No, absolutely not. I love him. Okay. You can't change another person. Now, he has to want to change and be willing to work at it. And that doesn't sound too likely, although I would suggest that you calmly express your needs in this area. But for the moment, if you don't think he'll change and you're upset by the criticism, it sounds to me like it's up to you to change how you respond to your husband. She said. What if your husband were married to a different woman, a woman named Sally, who looked different but did the same basic things that you do? Would he be critical of her? Well, yes, I know he would. Then the real problem is that you're taking the criticism personally. Most problems in life are not resolved by an actual change, but by a change in viewpoint. If you could develop detached mind, you'd stop taking things personally. You'd know someone else's reaction to you, good or bad, is a viewpoint based upon their past programming. It has nothing to do with you. The way they relate to you is the way they would relate to anyone who represented to them what you represent. In this case, your husband's a man who would criticize any wife. So I have to change my thinking? If you want to end the conflict, let go of your old beliefs about reality. Reality exists as a manifestation of your viewpoint. If you let your husband's criticism flow through you without affecting you, you rise above the effects of fear. If you can do that, you'll no longer have a problem, although nothing about the problem situation will have changed except your viewpoint. Maybe I could use some assertiveness training techniques too, she said. Good idea, I said. Dialogue number 3. Is boredom a fear-based emotion? Asked Terry, a middle-aged man clad in a herringbone sport coat with leather patches on the sleeves. Any negative emotion is based on fear, I said. Boredom is a loud message. It's saying, I'm living wrong. What do you mean? Terry asked. The human mind cannot tolerate boredom for long. The brain-mind professionals have documented that if you don't make your life interesting and meaningful, your mind will do it for you. It will generate conflicts, or maybe an illness, or an accident. Anything to make life more interesting. But I can't help it that I'm bored, he said. Bullshit, Terry. There's no challenge in your life. That's why you're bored. Whose responsibility is that if it's not yours? It's time to live a little more dangerously and start risking. The moment you do, your boredom will disappear. Dialogue number 4. Freedom from yourself will evolve out of a new way of thinking, a self-actualized master of life way of thinking. Self-examination is the first step. Examine your beliefs, your reactions, your concerns. Again, you can't change what you don't recognize. Well, I'm a perfectionist. Is that a fear? Asked a stern-looking young woman. Most perfectionists are neurotics. That's pretty fearful. Are you neurotic, Betty? I don't think so, she said. What is your reaction when you don't do a job perfectly? Well, I guess I feel guilty. Sure, I feel guilty, real guilty. Have you answered your own question? I said. She was silent for a while, then said, Okay, but what do I do about it? Well, I suggest that you begin by finding the cause of your neurosis. Everything we feel relates to a cause, which is based on a past event or a series of events that have programmed us to be the way we are. But no matter what the past cause, change will come through self-actualized awareness in the present. Now, after a back-to-the-cause group regression, Betty related the following. My mother died when I was only 5, so I don't know for sure if this is true, but in hypnosis, I relived a situation in which she spanked me and spanked me and spanked me. And I was probably about 3 years old, and I had gotten into her sewing kit and thrown the pieces all over the room. My mother became hysterical, and she told me to put everything back in the case exactly as it was. And if I didn't do it perfectly, she would spank me until I did. And I think I spent the whole afternoon futilely trying to get it perfect, and she'd leave the room and come back in a few minutes, and she'd check the box and spank me and repeat the process, and I was so scared I shook. Do you get that you no longer need to put the sewing kit back together, Betty? I said, laughing. From now on, you can do a good job without being a perfectionist. There's no longer any reason to feel guilty. Dialogue number 5. Pessimism must also be a fear, said Walter, a 40-ish, balding man, dressed very conservatively. I smiled and nodded in response. I wasn't always a pessimist. In my youth, I was pretty optimistic, but how can anyone go through the experiences of life without seeing how it works? It's screwed. I'm just a realist, acknowledging life for what it is. I said, a pessimist looks at life negatively. He's usually filled with anger because life hasn't been fair to him, or so he feels. And because life doesn't work the way he wants it to work, he blames life for all his problems. Right, Walter? No response. Right, Walter? Right, he mumbled. We've already covered the subject of self-responsibility in great detail in this seminar, so let's look at blame. Playing the part of a victim and blaming others for your circumstances is useless resistance. And blame is nothing but an expression of self-pity. Would you like us to pity you, Walter? Don't bother. Well, what about the programming power of pessimism? Now, that's heavy. Your mind is a biocomputer that creates your reality based upon your thoughts and emotions. Thus, the more pessimistic you are, the more miserable your life becomes. It's an automatic downward spiral. Are you having a wonderful life, Walter? No. And this seminar is just as stupid as I expected it would be. He got up and stalked out of the room. Dialogue number 6. Let's not get stuck on just the obvious fears, I said. Anyone with an addiction of any kind is not free, and anyone who is dominated by their passions is not free. I can't see that following your passions is a bad thing, said John, an overweight young man in his late 20s or early 30s. He wore tan duck pants and a bulky sweater. Being passionate isn't bad, John, but if your passions take control, causing you to ignore reason, you're being dominated by your passions. You might have such a passion for food that you indulge to the point of obesity. I don't think you want that. But if you do what you don't want to do, you are not free. What about sexual passions? He asked. If your sexual passions cause you to do things that result in loss of self-esteem, or if they endanger your life, the answer is pretty obvious, isn't it? Dialogue number 7. I really dislike someone I work with. In fact, the truth is that I hate them. But in this case, it isn't fear, it's wisdom. Ayn Rand says that we must never fail to produce moral judgment, said Linda, a thin woman of about 35, dressed in a sport coat and jeans. Well, although I agree with Ayn Rand in many areas, we're certainly at odds on judgment. But if you're a fan of hers, you also know that she says that hatred is generated by profound self-doubt, self-condemnation, and fear. It's a mental projection towards another of the hatred you feel toward yourself. Maybe that's true, I continued. I know that hatred is self-destructive as subconscious programming. It also generates programming that will draw what you hate back to you. What you resist, you will attract because you need to learn from it. You'll continue to draw the hated person or someone with the same tendencies into your life until you can release this fear. Examine hate in the light of the universal law of attraction. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. You attract what you are and what you concentrate upon. You always attract the qualities you possess. If you want peace and harmony in your life, you must become peaceful and harmonious. Dialogue number 8. I've been studying these things for 30 years, Richard, said an elderly lady who remained seated while speaking into the microphone. I've certainly changed my life for the better because of my expanded awareness, but I have a problem with the fear of insecurity. I don't think any of us are ever going to eliminate insecurity. Life is insecure. Love is insecure. We're always moving from the known to the unknown. I agree with you, Joanne. We don't eliminate our fears, but we can alter our viewpoint to rise above the effects of fear. The most self-actualized people on earth have fears, but the difference lies in the way they respond to fear. Let's explore the self-actualized viewpoint of insecurity. If you were to attain total security in a particular area, You would soon become bored with that aspect of your life. There would be no challenge, and it would become dull and mundane. So, transform the way you experience insecurity. It's insecurity, the unknown and unknowable, that makes life exciting, that generates the rush and the titillation, the thrill of aliveness. Instead of fearing insecurity, embrace it. Thank it. Dialogue number 9. In closing, I said, for those of you who accept reincarnation as what is, you understand that your fears keep you earthbound. They are your karma, and you will continue to reincarnate until you have no disharmonious attachments whatsoever. So, your earthly purpose is to learn to let go of fear. And while you're at it, life is not something to be endured and suffered through. Life is about achievement and success, and love and awareness, joy and exultation. Of course, no one will force you to experience life the way it's meant to be. You always have the free will to ruin it if you want to. And now here is an article called The Cause of Suffering. It's from Master of Life magazine, issue number 45. A good friend told me about his older sister's recent holiday visit. She had come to stay with his family during the Thanksgiving holidays. He thought it was nice she would want to spend them with him, as neither of them had been very close when they were younger, although each felt genuine affection for the other. As much as she had looked forward to having a good time with her brother's children, it just didn't work out that way. His youngest son, 3.5 years old, had declared silent war. "He's certainly a strong-willed child," the sister said. "He sure is," said my friend, realizing how the child was mirroring her. "I think he resents me sleeping in his bed," she said. "No, that's not it," my friend replied. "Instead of accepting him and enjoying him for what he is, you've been correcting him and telling him what he should and shouldn't do." "For his own good," the sister said. "No, things you think are for his own good," my friend responded. "You think he should wear a bib at lunch. He's proud of the fact that he doesn't need one anymore. You wouldn't let him move his chair. You rubber banded the doors to his toy box so he couldn't get into it. What he does bothers you. No 3-year-old needs a choice of mustards at mealtime. That's ridiculous. He makes instant choices, so it doesn't create a problem, and it empowers him. He gets to feel that he has some control of his reality. Ridiculous. Sis, a child is pure emotion, and you always get what you give. It's cause and effect, instant karma. If you're loving and accepting of him, he'll respond with love and acceptance. But if you criticize and need to be right, you'll generate resistance." After the first day, the little boy attempted to avoid his aunt. When that didn't work, he responded to her with such fierce intensity that she backed off, deciding it wasn't worth the battle. "Can't you just accept him and enjoy him without criticizing and telling him what to do?" my friend asked her. "No, I just can't do that. I can't help being the way I am." "Well, that's only true as long as you accept it, sis. Wisdom is a matter of changing behavior that doesn't work to behavior that does work." If you could simplify Buddha's wisdom down to just one line, it would have to be, it is your resistance to what is that causes your suffering. The message is so logical, but it seems to be very difficult for people to understand and put into effect in their lives. My friend's sister got to be right, but she lost the game. I don't think she enjoyed her visit. She resisted her brother's family's lifestyle, diet, beliefs, the topics of conversation, and California in general. In fact, she resisted everything that wasn't exactly the way she and her friends back home think things should be. That's what is. Your relatives aren't going to change. My friend knows and accepts this, but because he loves his sister, He'd like to see her enjoy herself when she comes to visit. But he also knows that all too often there is no way to save those you love from their pain. Of course, we all learn through our pain. It's what karma is all about. If you were to get punched in the nose every time you walk through a yellow door, eventually, if you have any sense, you'd learn to stop walking through yellow doors. If you burn your finger every time you touch a hot stove, eventually you'll stop touching hot stoves. If you make yourself miserable for years or lifetimes, when other people don't live up to your expectations, eventually you'll learn that it's your expectations, not other people, that are making you miserable. When your expectations are in conflict with what is, you resist what is and become upset. Now the following are some seminar and counter dialogues from our files that explore the concept from other perspectives. Dialogue number 1. Just because I resist my boss doesn't mean I'm losing the game, said Judy, a conservatively dressed woman in her mid-30s. Well, it does if you're being passed over for promotion, I replied. But my boss is an idiot. And he's your boss, that's what is. I don't think you're going to change that unless you quit. But it's ridiculous. You can't imagine how bad this guy is, she said, twisting the microphone cable for emphasis. Judy, what is that he's your boss. He probably won't recommend you for a raise or a promotion. Your expectations are the problem. Damned right they are. I expect him not to be an asshole. But what is that he's an asshole. Right. Right. Well, it's time he changed, she said, frowning at me. Well, is that realistic? Probably not. Well, we know what you've lost as a result of your resistance. What have you gained, or what will you gain? She paused and looked up at the ceiling and then down at the floor. Nothing, I guess. So you get to be right about your boss being an asshole, but you lose the game. That doesn't work, now does it? Wouldn't it be smarter to win the game? But he's an asshole. Judy, be logical. Get it. I get it, but I don't like it. It's not fair. Well, where does it say that life's supposed to be fair? Well, if I accepted your self-actualization ideas, I wouldn't have anything left to talk about. Wrong. You wouldn't have anything left to gripe about. Dialogue number 2. Are you saying that you have to accept total responsibility for your feelings? James asked. In his late 40s, he was very distinguished looking, dressed in slacks, a white shirt, red tie, and dark blue blazer. Yes, I said. Okay. I was recently divorced, and my ex-wife put me through the ringer. Doesn't she share some responsibility for the negativity I experienced? She didn't live up to your expectations of how a dear departing wife should act? Oh, come on, he snapped. You want to blame her. Before he could respond, I said, blame is self-pity. Well, all I'm saying is I'm not 100% responsible for my feelings. This is a cliché, James, but I'll say it anyway. Short of physical violence, it isn't what someone else says to you or does to you that affects you. It's what you add to it. It's what you think about what they said or did that affects you. Her getting the house and the newer car affected me. Really? Yes, really. He was beginning to get very upset. Well, this is a community property state. Didn't you get your half? Yes, but not the house and car. That affected me. You chose to let it affect you. What did you get? Well, our investments and the second car. And you could sell the investments and buy another house. He crossed his arms and did not respond. James, when a married couple gets divorced in California, each person gets half. That's what is. Your resistance to what is upsets you. You don't like the feelings the upset generates, and you want your ex-wife to share the responsibility. Isn't that about it? You have a way of twisting everything around. Yeah, isn't logic a bitch? Dialogue number 3. I think resistance can be good, challenged June, a pretty young woman in her late 20s. Her outfit, a layered wool dress, a shawl, and boots, had a vibrant southwestern flair. I resist fearful things, and my life is a lot more comfortable because of it. What kind of fearful things? I asked. Oh, the freeway,